Love Life has had this history of antagonists and rivals since their humble beginnings with Muse. While they weren't that present for aspects such as art and music videos, they shined once the anime started premiering, since that's when a story can be officially incorporated. Characters and groups such as Ellie and Avi served as both individuals and also as a plot device to further the story. They challenged the group for their own reasons and helped themselves and the rest of the group understand each other more. At most, however, they were an obstacle that didn't have much trouble in the long run. I say antagonists, but for the most part, the tone is kept relatively chill, and characters that initially seem cold warm up very quickly after resolving their struggles. The most evil anyone gets is no school idol club, or we're gonna beat you in love life, but it wasn't anything that could be considered a villain. They don't go out of their way to sabotage them. No, it's a fair fight for everyone involved, no hard feelings. Shifting over to Sunshine with Aqua, the same feeling was felt throughout the series. Antagonists and rivals that were the same obstacles, with a slight hint of edge from the rival side with Saint Snow. Even then, it was very deja vu with the events that occurred, which can be said for a lot of Sunshine. This growing formula seemed to address that Love Life wasn't really a show that needed bad guys or a villain to make the story interesting. We had premises that already made the plot engaging, such as the school closing, but it was mainly a character-centric story. It focused on who these characters are, and if their character arc made the story progress forward, then that's just how the story goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. It tells the story perfectly fine, and future projects have gone out of their way to tackle the characters even more with amazing results. But there was one time where they deviated from that. In 2019, Love Life released their 3D RPG rhythm gacha mobile game School Idol Festival All-Stars. The group that was focused on All-Stars, Nijigasaki, was heavily experimented on by the Love Life staff, that's talked about more in one of my past videos. Short and to the point, they did a lot of unique ideas, and this included new ideas for its story, new elements, new characters, new concepts. So I bring up this idea once more. Love Life's antagonists have always been alongside the story and not in front of it, like a goal or barrier to push through to get forward. They hate the School Idol Club, but they're not doing anything about it, so the tone is kept relatively peaceful. Even for something like Sunshine, it's more interpersonal rather than a danger, which doesn't really fit the antagonist term for this video. What if that changed? What if there was a character who was in front of the story? What if there was a character who was an actual antagonist? Someone who not only made her stance, but actually acted upon it to the max? What if there was a character that actually had your stomach clench and blood boil with her actions? And what if those actions actually halted the story? What if the plot wasn't just revolved around this character, but that she was in fact the plot? What if there was a character who was a villain? Or maybe seem like one. How would the fanbase react? Would it be positive? Would it be negative? Would the bad writing contribute to the reception? Would they harass the actual voice actors for no reason? All of these questions and more will be answered in this video starring the egoist herself, Lanzhu Zhong. From her initial appearance to her focus in the movie, Lanzhu has no doubt experienced probably the biggest whiplash in terms of how her character was handled. And it's one of the few cases where I need to explain how the story dealt with her and how the real life world dealt with her. These two go side by side, and in order to fully understand Lanzhu, we gotta go almost half a decade ago to figure out how all this started. It's time to act like SIFAS and SIF are still alive, guys. Let's get that brain rewinding, because this is going to be a long one. And to let you know, this is an opinionated video. Please watch till the end before you comment. The year is 2019. After a year's delay, Love Life All-Stars is finally released in Japan and given a global release in 2020. With a drastically different type of gameplay focusing on RPG elements, All-Stars already showed that it was going to be different compared to the status quo. It should go without saying that this not only applied to the gameplay, but the story as well. This is the first time a group's main introduction and story would be via visual novel format. Their previous mobile game, School Idol Festival, also had a visual novel format, but the anime was the main meat of the story. The stories in SIF served as supplementary material, or just extra stories. This goes for Aqua as well, as their inclusion was incredibly well timed to the release of the anime, which was also the main meat of their story. Nijigasaki, at the time, did not have the luxury of this, so everything that needed to be known about the characters would have to be inside this visual novel. And let's start here, because in order to properly immerse you into how it was like reading All-Stars for the first time, we need to address a few things. Firstly, a visual novel is not an anime. This type of storytelling allows for a much longer form of storytelling, for better or for worse. Stories and events are a lot longer and allow characters to have a lot more complex growth depending on how much time is given to them. Secondly, the wait time. Stories came via chapters, and oftentimes there would be a break or an abrupt end. It's comparable to a weekly anime episode, but sometimes the wait would be longer than expected, usually around a month. I just want you to keep this in mind, as when we do talk about certain events, a lot of it is first impressions, speaking as the story goes along. No one really knew what was going to happen, so everyone was keen to share their thoughts. Combine that with story elements fans weren't used to seeing, and people indeed shared their thoughts. Let's provide a quick synopsis of the story though, for anyone who never got the chance to read All-Stars. The story of All-Stars focuses on the group Nijigasaki, which consists of solo school idols as they work together to achieve their own goals. Let's focus on the solo aspect aspect though, as it's incredibly important to the series. In contrast to other groups such as Muse and Aqua, Nijigasaki is more individualized. They aren't unified as one single entity. They all have their own goals and ambitions, and that in turn causes them to all go different paths. This is not only shown with their personality, but also their outfits and designs. Most of the outfits they wear are unique for them specifically. Sometimes they'll unite design-wise for a group song, but most of the time they're doing their own thing. They all treat each other like playful rivals, but they don't hesitate to support each other because at the end of the day, they're all friends. Back to the story, Season 1 mainly consists of everyone understanding their individual goals as school idols. Before the story started, the school idol club disbanded because of disagreements between what they all wanted to do. Setsuna, acting as leader, usually called out the shots, and this would increase tension as not everyone wanted to do what she did. Throughout the course of Chapter 1, we see how the school idol club recruits both old and new members with the preface of, we're all doing our own thing, but together. Characters like Karen specifically join with that mindset, and a good portion of the series is dedicated to them understanding what it means to both be allies and rivals in the school idol space. They use groups such as Muse and Aqua in order to compare themselves and find their own shine in a sense. What makes them Nijigasaki despite each of them being their own person? Any competition is treated with care and a damn that sucks I lost, but you got this. The tone is kept chill. Despite some moments where characters doubt themselves, it's nothing too serious. Until it is. In Season 1, Chapter 8, we are introduced to Shioriko Mifune, a first-year student who is not a fan of Nijigasaki's work ethic, and that includes the school idol club. In just one chapter later, she's able to overthrow the current student council president, Setsuna, out of her role. Her motto and goals as student council president is to prioritize what students need, not what they want. A case of where if you're good at doing sports but you enjoy being in the art club, then according to Shioriko, you are wasting your efforts and talents and should be doing sports. This sentiment spreads to the school idol club, where she sees the potential in each of their members, but deduces that the school idol club is hindering what they really should be doing. It's similar to previous cases where the student council president doesn't support school idols, but Shioriko's a lot more ruthless in her methods. She is a constantly growing threat. Harsh, but with reason. She threatens to abolish the club if the members don't raise their grade level. She plans to no longer allow students to join clubs and instead try out for clubs, in which they only pass if they pass the test. Now, is the test going to be made by the clubs themselves? Why, of course not. The tests are going to be made by Shioriko herself to determine if they're using their talents correctly. I do actually want to create a video focusing on Shioriko separately, but I bring up these elements to show you the new scenarios Nijigasaki is put into. Nijigasaki is put against someone who doesn't just dislike school idols, but will actively do everything within power and reason to abolish it. Regardless if you think Shioriko's arc wasn't written the best and the like, you can't deny that it was trying something new. You didn't see Ellie pulling this shit, nor Daya doing this. This was a character bordering on the edge of being more than the antagonist that we're used to. The only reason I bring up Shioriko is because she's the start of something new brewing up in the Nijigasaki story. We didn't know it back then, but Shioriko opened the hole up for another character to take what she did and push it to the max. At the end of Season 1, the protagonist of the game, known as Anata-chan, goes on a trip overseas for a music course. The status quo currently is that Shioriko has officially joined the school idol club, and everyone is tightly knit. We can see that especially in the 2 episodes that come after Anata-chan is gone, where it's mainly everyone chilling together. At the end of Chapter 19, however, we get introduced to 2 new characters in this series, Lanzhu Zhong and Mia Taylor. Lanzhu is the daughter of Nijagasaki's chairman, or principal, and is Shioriko's childhood friend. Mia Taylor is a New Yorker, and that's all that matters right now. Lanzhu is transferred to Nijigasaki from Hong Kong and hopes to become a school idol, and her attitude is immediately present. Calling Japan a tiny country, enslaving a 14-year-old from America to come with her, promising to get rid of Shioriko's boring life. For lack of a better term, she has an ego and is confident in herself and her abilities. Now, is she all talk? Well, we need to transition into Chapter 20, the first chapter of Season 2. After a 1-month time skip, Anata-chan arrives back home from her overseas course. She soon witnesses Lanzhu performing, taking the front stage and making her presence immediately known, asking people to put full faith in her. With the other members chilling in the background and doing no work whatsoever, Lanzhu carries the entire performance. Kasumi, after discovering that Anata-chan is back, brings her up to speed on what's happened. After the events of Chapter 19, Shioriko would have Lanzhu and Mia join the school idol club, but due to different goals, Lanzhu decided to create her own school idol club to rival theirs, and immediately tells them to disband the original school idol club to join hers. This club is called the Association, and due to Lanzhu being the daughter of the chairman, she boots everyone out of the club, along with not granting them permission to perform on stages. The only way you can be a school idol is if you join the Association, and from what we've seen, other members have already joined it. Now their reasons will be elaborated on later, but strictly speaking, it's illegal to be a school idol. Lanzhu establishes a security force that searches for anyone doing a school idol activity, forcing the remaining school idol members to do guerrilla warfare just to get practice in. Needless to say, shit has gone for the roof. The Association has everything that a school idol club would need. Top-of-the-line training resumes, a composer who's an actual prodigy, and facilities designed to make those in the club the best of the best. Lanzhu makes this evidently clear, being incredibly proud of the work she's done and promising to make things even better in the Association. She loves school idols and wants to make everyone feel the same. So why do some in the original school idol club reject the association? Even Lanzhu questions this, being genuinely confused that no one wants to join the club despite all the effort she's put into it. Her association, the school idol club, is one focused on performance and skills over anything else. Only those who are the best shall be given the spotlight, and her ego shines through as she doubts many of them can even top her skills. Do you remember when I brought up the individuality of the Nijigasaki club? How everyone has their own unique goals and visions for what they want to do as a school idol? Well, Lanzhu's mindset directly conflicts against that. Unless you have the skills, your vision does not matter. Lanzhu's view is structured like a pyramid, where you can work your way up until your vision is allowed, which is in heavy contrast with the original school idol club, where everyone was free to express their vision. This is the main reason for why the other Nijigasaki members reject the association, with Lanzhu not understanding the concept. She has the best equipment, the best skills, Mia Taylor, and she's all about having the best option. If you could choose a song written by an amateur versus a pro, she would choose the pro because why wouldn't you? Shioriko calls her self-willed, and that's a good way of describing her. Overconfident, stubborn, kind of a fucking asshole unintentionally, but it's her confidence in herself that allows her to pave her path. She isn't all talk. She'll unintentionally shit talk you and have the receipts to prove that she's better. Shioriko in the story serves as a gateway to the mind of Lanzhu, helping the player and us understand why Lanzhu is the way she is. We can clearly see she has good intentions as she wants everyone to become the best school idols, but her mindset is one that's essentially stripping away people's freedom so that they have to earn it, which is, huh? And let's not forget, she enforces this shit as well. I need to mention it again because of how insane it is. She has a official security force that snitches on you practicing to prevent you from doing so. This is not just a personal thing. This is an official established force thanks in part to Lanzhu's influence that this goes through, and this was the start of people's initial skepticism with the story. Like Shioriko, she wasn't all talk. She did everything in her power to make her stance, and this time, that stance has created an obstacle in front of the Nijigasaki club. She stole their members, their club room, their privilege to even practice. This was not just an antagonist or a rival, this was a villain. An initial shock was the feeling a lot of fans felt. This was something new for the Love Life series, and many people were understandably worried in how this was going to go down. Many hated her on sight, while some loved her. We have a character who's extremely assertive in their goals and does everything in their power to force people to join them. It creates conflict and eventually betrayal as some members choose to leave the old school idol club to join the association. This type of conflict was different from others we've seen. Lanzhu created a situation in which a civil war ensued between members, and a lot of people were angry at her for this unique scenario. This was at the start though, and could change as the story progressed, but that's only if the story got better. Character motivations were still in the air, Lanzhu's whole deal hadn't been fully explained, yet people were still intrigued to see how the story would go. Or they just left because they hate conflict. Over the course of season 2, we start to see what makes Lanzhu tick. Her ego is massive, and she thinks she has the best course of action in mind for everyone involved. It's actually similar to Shioriko, which probably explains why they're childhood friends. She has a way of seeing the potential in someone shine in a sense, and doesn't want to go to waste. She's genuinely happy when Shizuku joins, hugging and promising her to make her the best idol. It creates a confusing feeling where you aren't sure how to feel because she's very passionate about what she does, but at the same time she set up a security squad to force people to join her club. She wants people to be the best, but only when they're with her. If not, then she'll just forbid you from practicing and improving. It's like some thank you for giving up and finally submitting to me type energy. What makes Lanzhu different from other characters who have an ego is because of her already existing villainous actions. It's not cute or funny. It's slightly terrifying knowing that she really does consider herself the most important person in the world and projects that onto the others. Kanata one time states that she's jealous of Lanzhu, with Lanzhu stating that she should feel free to be jealous of her because she's Lanzhu. And the best, or worst part is, she can back up everything she's saying. What makes her interesting though is her social abilities, or lack thereof. Her actions show how much she tries to force everyone to join her club, but her words speak in a different tone. She has an ego, but she genuinely wants to hang out with people. She constantly invites people to her buffet, tries to jump into conversations, and is happy when the members in her club improve as she sees them as friends. Even when certain members leave, she still has a big heart and considers them best friends. She just wants them to improve to be on the same level as her. She doesn't really let things get to her, and that includes criticism of her, which we'll get to later. You can see what Shioriko sees in her, as her insistence for social interaction shows through every scene with her, while still maintaining her massive ego. Shioriko's the one who usually rephrases Lanzhu's words or helps bring her down to reality. I'll be frank, Shioriko is a saving grace for Lanzhu in terms of understanding her character at the start, because without her in the context of why she does what she does, then I feel a ton of more people would hate her. It's very telling that there's a scene in chapter 20 where Shioriko vents about Lanzhu to explain that no, she actually has good intentions despite her actions, as like a message to those who already hate Lanzhu's guts, not like it stopped them. Lanzhu's character begins having senses of development when Shizuku leaves the association. She originally joined to see the difference between it and the school idol idol club, and while the association had the better equipment and the better environment, she chose to go back because of the voice that she lost while in the association. Lanzhu doesn't understand why Shizuku would do this, urging herself and Mia to try harder to beat the others. Mia, however, is hurt by Shizuku leaving the association for her own reason, and it comes down to her composing skills. I elaborate on this way more in my Rina Mia section for my Love Life Ships video, but Mia Taylor is a prodigy. She's a professional composer and has been creating songs since she was probably spitting formulas. She's someone who only cares about the result and determining what will logically do the best. When Shizuku chooses to abandon Mia's song and instead sing a Nata-chan song, Mia is dumbfounded and doesn't understand why Shizuku would sing an amateur song rather than a professional song. In a way, Lanzhu and Mia are similar, with both thinking very objectively in terms of art and skills. However, it's here where Mia's confidence begins to crack, as she sees something in the Nata-chan song that she didn't have on her own, and it begins to change her. For the first time in her life, Mia begins doubting her skills, and it begins to have an effect on Lanzhu. She doesn't seem to have a grasp of sympathizing or understanding people, as she dismisses Mia's struggles in order to focus on her own thoughts. She feels people should be honored to work for her, similar to a queen and her servants. She straight up says to Mia that it's her duty to make songs for her, which should instantly tell you her mindset and how she feels towards other people. She essentially leaves Mia in the dust, and it's only thanks to Rina that she's able to recover. While not having big impacts at first, Mia finding her own purpose rather than what's considered the best is the first crack in Lanzhu's surrounding circle. As the story goes along, more and more people find their own meaning for being a school idol, including Shioriko, which hits Lanzhu the most and makes her rethink her actions and goals. In chapter 28, we finally get Lanzhu's backstory and why she is the way she is. After an argument with Shioriko where she states she isn't on Lanzhu's level, she reflects on her past and remembers how naturally talented she was, how she was better than everyone else. Eventually though, because of that talent, people would gravitate away from her due to jealousy or the fact she couldn't fit in. She grew up rich, spoiled, alone, in a world where she didn't have references for things such as friends or hanging out. The only friend she had growing up was Shioriko. She was so naturally far ahead that eventually, an ego began forming in her head to act as a reason that people weren't able to be friends with her. They need guidance, they need help, they need assistance in order for them to get to her level. Over the course of the story, we've seen her ego be portrayed as how she's superior to you, but as Shioriko stated, it was never in bad intentions. It finally explains the reason for why she constantly wanted the other members to join the association. She wanted not just friends, but friends who could match up to her and her skills. Her methods, however, would prove to be extremely inconsiderate towards the people she was trying to help. Security force. She saw them as people beneath her, and she didn't think they were peasants or anything. She genuinely just wanted them to be up with her. What Lanzhu failed to understand, however, was that it isn't all about talent and skills. Shioriko states it very carefully when she admits she can't keep up with Lanzhu. Everyone has different aptitudes. Everyone has their own skill sets, and doing what you personally can do is better than trying to imitate someone else. This is helped by Anata-chan, the main character who, over the course of the entire Nijigasaki story, has helped each of the school idols become who they want to be. It's not a matter of what is the best, it's a matter of what works the best in regards to the individual. It's why Lanzhu was originally captivated by school idols. She saw how each of them shine in their own way, that they were all rivals yet friends. It was what she was looking for, to have people stand by her side while still being equal. Idols whose focus wasn't entirely on the skills in singing, but the passion and expression of who they are. When you finally read it that way, you start to have a lot more sympathy for Lanzhu, someone who was burdened with talent and forced to think the only way she could have friends and not be alone was if they caught up to her skills, completely ignorant that it isn't all about that. When the other members discover this about Lanzhu as she intends to leave Nijigasaki, they all decide to collectively forgive her as she was simply misunderstood and that she didn't mean any harm whatsoever. I'm sorry, what? Now unfortunately, I'm gonna have to address the elephant in the room. I've been keeping a very neutral viewpoint while recapping the events, but after this point is where I need to bring up a certain topic because it directly affects how the characters and the story react to Lanzhu's actions. Bad writing, retcons, and fan reception. I'm sorry to any people who like Season 2 of All-Stars, but after rewatching it, oh my god, this is so unfortunate. I'm gonna be as professional as I can, but I was genuinely confused reading a lot of these chapters, and I can only imagine how it felt reading it in real time and seeing none of this make sense. Now, the character of Lanzhu is one I think was done incredibly well. She's pretty consistent personality-wise, and it's really intriguing seeing her character grow as she learns more about what being a school idol means. There's just one problem though. It's everything that isn't Lanzhu. Before I started the script for this video, I asked a ton of people questions about All-Stars Season 2 and their thoughts on it. I also asked them other questions which will appear later on in the video. The amount of opinions I got varied immensely, but the general consensus was that Lanzhu wasn't inherently the problem, the writing surrounding her was. The hard part about talking about Lanzhu is I can't tell if certain traits about her are due to the bad writing of Season 2, or that's simply a character flaw about her. I'm talking about the 1984 shit. This is something that gets slid by so hard at the beginning, and I'm still shocked about it. She set up a security security force to prevent them from practicing. She kicked them out of her own club and made it so the only option was to join her. She blocks out every access of being a school idol to them. Out of everyone, Kasumi is the only one who actually retains the opinion of, yo, what the fuck, bro? No one takes the situation seriously. It's written as if the association is a rival group and nothing else. It is a genuine whiplash going from chapter 20 to chapter 28, where you get the flashbacks to when Lanzhu starts up their association. Her mom gives her the go-ahead to create the association as Nijigasaki is all about freedom. Hello? Chairman, your daughter is terrorizing these poor students. For the record, I'm not against Lanzhu forcing the members to join her. I think it's a really interesting flaw of her to go overboard for actions, but the problem is how the story deals with it. As the story goes along, it tries to ignore that this ever happened, which is impossible to do because it's the literal event that causes things to go down. Why does everyone suddenly forgive Lanzhu for this? Lanzhu recognizes the action she did and rightfully blamed herself for it. I like that. That makes sense for a character. It's so bizarre because right after Lanzhu decides to leave, Shioriko explains Lanzhu's backstory and everyone's like, oh, that makes sense. We forgive her for terrorizing us and splitting us apart. She was just misunderstood. We should have communicated with her more, despite the times they clearly did beforehand. I like that Rina is the one to bring it up as she's had communication problems as well, but I don't like that her 1984 action gets slid by. It becomes a problem where Lanzhu isn't the issue, it's everyone around her. The story feels like it was written in real time in my opinion. It seems that a ton of elements were suddenly changed as the chapters came out rather than a fully structured storyline. It's like every chapter after chapter 20 tries to downplay the fact that Lanzhu forced everyone to join her club. Take the security force I mentioned early on. They were established to be halting the school idol activities before season 2 even happened. However, just 2 chapters later, suddenly the security force and the association become sympathetic towards the ban the school idol club's activities. Please note that before Nata-chan came back, the school idol club was being terrorized by the security force, and even more so, I and Karen, former members of the school idol club, were completely okay with this. You can make an argument that this was planned to happen, to have the association stop tormenting the school idol club, but why immediately step an interesting scenario just to downplay the chapter later? It takes less than 3 chapters for everything regarding Lanzhu's initial actions to suddenly disappear. Lanzhu gets rid of the security force because it doesn't matter anymore, and so her actions aren't painted in the worst light. You can see the writers slowly taking apart some of Lanzhu's big flaws to reduce the amount of faults people have about her. Let's be frank, we all knew Lanzhu and Mia were going to join a club. It was just a matter of how it was going to happen, and this was definitely not the smoothest way to do so. Also, holy shit, Shioriko. What the fuck? Her character is so bizarre, and the only reason I didn't lose my shit was because her and Lanzhu are childhood friends, and so there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with dealing with her. Shioriko, while still in the association, has immense respect for the school idol club and still wants to support them. Here's the problem. Lanzhu is terrorizing the entire Nijigasaki cast for not joining her. What does Shioriko do? Absolutely nothing. She's the reason why the association grows to the level that's at, and she's the person who sets up the security force. They try to downplay it by saying Shioriko specifically chose these twins as a security force to minimize the club's activities, but it's very clear they're still doing their job of acting as security guards, so you're still contributing to the problem. Along with that, because I have to mention this again, this was established before season 2, so for a brief period of time while Nata-chan was gone, Shioriko was completely okay with creating a security force dedicated to stopping the school idol club. And then in chapter 28, we get a flashback where Shioriko specifically warns Lanzhu not to be pushing and go overboard, yet does nothing when she actually does go overboard. I get that they're childhood friends and will ignore certain flaws, I'm guilty of this as well, but at a certain point you gotta ask yourself whether this is morally right or not. The worst part is I can't tell if that's just bad writing or just an actual flaw for character. And I think the frustrating part is that Shioriko herself was in a similar situation. Remember when I talked about Shioriko in season 1? How she forced her beliefs onto everyone, that everyone should do what they need to do rather than what they want to do? When that happened, everyone was on Shioriko's ass. The only reason why Shioriko was able to be understood is when she began getting criticized for her actions. Other clubs weren't down with being forced to do things they didn't want to do, and Shioriko started doubting her own thoughts. She wanted what was best for everyone, and it's only by accepting what she did was wrong that she's able to grow upon it. This is not the same with Lanzhu. Lanzhu's never deeply criticized, and any points that go against her just bounce off her head. She doesn't let it get to her, and I like that for her character as it helps show her overconfidence, but the story struggles to find a cracking point to help people understand Lanzhu. Shioriko broke rules and went overboard and people rejected it, thus creating a cracking point for her character. Lanzhu doesn't get that treatment, and no one really seems to try to, rebel in an official way, such as protesting or, contacting someone. The reason why Shioriko wasn't able to do anything was because of Lanzhu's mom being the chairman, and that makes sense in terms of authority. Lanzhu's mom just kinda lets her fuck around, and while that explains how Lanzhu got mad with power, it just shows that Lanzhu's mom should probably be fired. I can't tell if that's bad writing or an actual flaw with Lanzhu's mom. This will be elaborated on in the anime universe. Either way, all it does is protect Lanzhu as she has an abnormal amount of power compared to any other character. I'm willing to even say she has plot armor with how much protection she gets from the story. It's like the story shifts to brush aside her major actions. This is why I'm conflicted with how Lanzhu is handled. Her character is there, her actions are there, her personality is there, but the story around her isn't there. Characters don't react in the way you think they would, and it paints the writers as shielding Lanzhu because she needs to join a club eventually somehow, completely ignoring that they're responsible for putting her in this situation. Chapter 20 shows so much promise for this premise, as you can see at first that everyone is not on board with Lanzhu's actions, with some treating her like a villain. But it just slowly fizzles out until Kasumi is the only one that's understandably still pissed off at Lanzhu. Do you see what I mean? There's so much potential if they stuck their guns with what Lanzhu did and had the characters react accordingly. It would create a story where Lanzhu would face repercussions for her actions, and having the people she wants to be friends with all directly reject her would create a cracking point for a character to be delved into. Instead of just wondering why people aren't joining her club, Lanzhu would probably feel more alienated and isolated as she runs around trying to find a reason for people not joining her. But no, the characters just brushed it aside and it feels so unnatural. Lanzhu still accepts what she did, but there's no consequences for what she did by the other members. What makes it more confusing is that Lanzhu still has guilt for what she did, further showing that the issue of the writing isn't Lanzhu, but the people around Lanzhu and how they react. Chapter 28 reaffirms that Lanzhu had no bad intentions whatsoever, with her praising everyone's individuality in Nijigasaki. She loves that they're all unique and that they all stand together. But the moment she establishes the association, she creates a power pyramid, only allowing those that have the skills to have their vision shared. That's a very big flaw of Lanzhu's character, and we understand why she set it up that way. She was taught that skill is the only way to grow, as she herself grew up that way all alone. She wants to ensure that people won't have the same trouble she had, so she goes overboard with ensuring everyone is the best of the best in due time. It's interesting and an amazing flaw, but the way it's presented as it goes along seems like the story is doing its best to hide those actions, which I am not down with. It's like these flashbacks were written to fit Lanzhu's character at the start, but due to retcons, they start adding extra lines to make sure the audience knows that Lanzhu had good intentions. It's so on the nose having Shioriko tell Lanzhu, make sure to be careful if not forcing everyone to join you. Don't worry, I won't do that because I love all the members in the school idol club. Wink wink guys. All it does is paint Shioriko in a worse light as she warns Lanzhu not to do this before she creates the association and still doesn't do anything even after she does it. It's the reason why I had to bring up the poor writing for this season. Lanzhu's forgiveness by the others isn't earned the slightest, and watching it in real time actually made me think I was missing something because why were we suddenly forgiving her? I'm down for forgiving her, but this isn't how I thought it would go. The way Lanzhu goes about apologizing to everyone does go down the way I actually thought it would. It's not something that completely vanishes off her mind, and that's good, but the reactions don't feel right. And if you disagree and think season 2 is actually amazing, then more power to you. I'd actually love to see your comment on it because this season is very heavily discussed. I mean, I actually like Lanzhu's development. I don't think it's perfect, but you get to see how she gets humbled, how she starts to see the school idol club's true goals. It's intriguing. The different sides we get to see of her before she apologizes is good, but the other pieces don't line up. There are still good things in this season, no doubt. I really enjoy Mia's arc as I can heavily relate to it, and I like the concept of the association versus the school idol club. The association focuses on logically being the best, while the school idol club focuses on the unique visions of everyone involved. Passion versus professionalism. There were very clear concepts and ideas that I feel had so much potential, but weren't explored because of its commitment issues. One thing I love about Lanzhu and her use as a plot device is how she both represents and tests the individuality of Nijigasaki. She's someone who was forcefully born into individuality because of her talent, and it's caused her to be isolated and lonely. No one can match up to her, and so it gets shown with her actions in which she tries to get people to match up to her. She's all about challenges, and wants to make sure people can thrive to be at their best. Let's go back to a point I mentioned regarding Nijigasaki as school idols. They're solo school idols. They have their own goals and visions, and in the club, they're able to be who they want to be. While they've had conflicts and arguments, the story has shown the positive side of being individuals. They're all unique and can't be compared to each other. Lanzhu, however, begins to show the negative side of being a solo school idol. Now that the association has been established, some of the members question whether or not it's in their own best interest to join it. Do their goals line up with the association more than the school idol club? For some of them, it does. It creates a very unique situation where their own goals and visions set them on a path towards the association, and many of the members interpret it as betrayal given the bonds they have with each other. For characters like Karen, it's already been established that she has her own goals as a school idol, so it's not surprising that she leaves for the association as it has what she personally needs. She wants the best training, the best equipment, she's a professional model, so having an environment like this is important. The same is applied to Shizuku, who is in theater, so having this environment where she's trained to the max works for her. It's only when she realizes that her vision of being a school idol isn't allowed that she returns back to the school idol club. Now the concept of this is sound, and I liked it at the beginning, but the problem is they made them act out of character in order for this to work. Let me explain. Karen joining the association makes sense, and people can debate whether I joining the association makes sense, but here's the deal. They act like the whole security force thing isn't happening. This happens literally in chapter 20, where the reasons they provide for joining the association make sense for the most part, if it's what they want to do. However, they just completely gloss over the fact that a partial reason for them joining the association is because they were quite literally forced to. Ai's only reason correlating to this is that they couldn't practice, and she wanted to practice, so she decided to join the association, but the school idol club is able to practice, so it doesn't exactly fit. There are two stories going on here. One where it's the association versus the school idol club. Are you willing to give up your freedom of being a school idol if it means you can improve professionally? This story is interesting and provides a lot of potential for each character to rediscover their purpose for being a school idol. The other story, however, is Lanzhu being a villain by banning them from performing and preventing them from practicing, all to force them to join her. This is where the out-of-character moments really come to play here. After all the good times and bonding moments in Season 1, I and Karen do not feel a single amount of guilt for dipping out of the school idol club. It's one thing to leave, but it's another to leave for a group that's actively oppressing your friends. Out of everyone, Kasumi is the only one who logically gets upset at this. I and Karen act like nothing happened, and the others act like it didn't happen as well. The biggest problem with Season 2 is the threat of Lanzhu oppressing the school idol club. No, I'm serious. This is the biggest issue. If this was removed and Lanzhu was just a rival group that had better tools and equipment, then I think the conflict would be pretty good. I don't know why I pronounced it like that. And that's what the story wants you to think it is. It wants you to think that they're just a rival group and that Lanzhu is just someone who constantly wants people to join her for words and not her actions. And if you view it that way, you can see what they're going for. It still fits with Lanzhu's character of wanting people to match up to her. She wants people to be the best and constantly wants to hang out and become friends. She's a clear fan of them and it shows even at the start. But it's this little black spot of Lanzhu stripping away everything from the school idol club to force them to join her that breaks it all apart. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Lanzhu oppressing the school idol club is bad writing or just a flaw with the character? I personally think it's bad writing, as they immediately try to backpedal / forget it ever happened. It honestly feels like an actual fuck up with the characterization of her, as the story does everything in its power to make you forget. But at the same time, her villainous actions were established in chapter 20, Lanzhu's first main chapter. So it was an integral part of her character until the story decided it wasn't. Both of them conflict against each other, so chicken or the egg. In chapter 28, everyone in Nijigasaki goes over Lanzhu's backstory, and they act like she was misunderstood, which I accept for the most part, but they never specify she literally oppressed everyone. I'm not mad they try to understand her. Even at the beginning, they were interested in her and her goals, but oh my god, it feels so forced, like they had some short-term memory loss from chapter 20 and before season 2 started. I feel like I've overstated this, but oh my god, I love Lanzhu, but I hate that the story ignores her biggest crimes. You have this amazing character who is built off of forced individuality and how she tries to have other people up at her level, even if her methods are unconventional or evil. The worst part is, she isn't even aware of it and just really wants friends. There's so many possibilities for how this can go, and the one route they go down, they immediately go back up. And then we get a watered down resolution in which everyone already forgives her when she finally comes to terms with what she did. All it does is reaffirm to me that this story had to have been written in real time partially, because there's no way this was the original way the story was gonna go. It's two cases for this. One, this was the way the story was written, and everything was supposed to go down this path. If that's the case, the story was written extremely poorly. Two, the story was constantly changed via retcons, creating the clusterfuck I just described. If this is the case, I still think it's written extremely poorly because it couldn't stick to its initial premise. But why were there retcons? Why was the story constantly changed in my opinion? I alluded to it earlier, but to dive more into the issues of season 2 and how it affected Lanzhu, we need to talk about the one aspect that affected it the most. The fan reception. Out of everything in this video, this one took the most effort to gather. I firstly want to give shouts to everyone in the description for help with this video. It wasn't just gathering the initial thoughts of people, but evidence of this and how the fallout occurred. I had to go through Billy streams, old Twitter threads, Reddit, and contact multiple people who were there almost 4 years ago when the events happened. This is all to show and prove that the reaction towards season 2 wasn't something isolated to just a story, but love life as a whole. And all of this is extremely important to understanding how Lanzhu was impacted by this. With that being said, it's time to go detective noodle mode. Like I mentioned way earlier, initial reactions were skeptical. Some liked the conflict, some didn't, and some waited until the story was to be explored. And as the story continued being explored, the reactions of the fans were not that positive. This extended both to the global side and the Japanese side. Now I'm not going to be generalizing people's thoughts because everyone's an individual, but many complaints started rising regarding how the story is being handled. I and Karen got a ton of backlash for their decision to leave the school idol club, and while I'll still say I understand why they did it, a lot of people didn't really care and considered it betrayal. And those who stuck around to see how it concluded would be left confused, as it was clear the story was trying to fix its past mistakes. Many people lost sympathy for I and Karen even when they got their focus episodes, as they felt it was forced, unnecessary, and felt like a cheap retcon. This video isn't focused on I and Karen, which is the reason I didn't go too much into them. Their only importance to the video is how they ignored that Lanzhu was oppressing their friends. The target soon shifted to Lanzhu as her plot armor was showing more and more. During season 2, there was a mini tournament where the association school idol club competed to see who's better. Lanzhu was able to beat everyone, including Setsuna, who's arguably the best at the school idol club. With all the protection that was given to Lanzhu in the story, people began pushing her back. There was nothing endearing about her egotistic nature, and as the story went along, the more and more problems people had with the story could be traced to one thing: her. Lanzhu was the plot. She instigated everything and is responsible for a ton of conflicts that occurred in the story. She's the reason Iron Karen betrayed the Squatter Club. Now, was it her fault that the story downplayed her actions and didn't provide the best focus for Iron Karen? No, but since she was the reason for all of it happening, she got shat on the most. It created a situation in which Lanzhu wasn't gonna win no matter what. She was the villain. She was advertised as such in chapter 20, where again, she forces the club to join her. Those who didn't like the conflict at all put the blame on Lanzhu for starting it. And those who were invested in the story and gave it a chance saw the flaws in the story, and while they gave credit where it's due, the problems started rising. You saw how I talked about how they downplay and retcon Lanzhu's actions, and it got messy to the point that even to those who enjoyed the story, they had to admit that if Lanzhu was gone, literally none of this would be happening. Another thing that contributed to the hate for this story, at least on the global side, were the translations. During this time, the global version was behind the Japanese version, so we had to rely on fan translations and word of mouth from Japanese players. We'll be focusing on how the Japanese reacted soon, but let's just say a lot of miscommunication occurred during this time. Going through Discord chats, Reddit forums, and my interviews, it seems there was often a game of telephone in how people reacted to chapters coming out. There was a ton of nuance lost within the translations, and when it came to characters like Iron Karen, they were reduced to Lamau, they betrayed the club. Some people I talked to even blamed certain fan subs for contributing to the discussion. And Queendom. Holy shit. I was told this by Amarana, but Queendom single-handedly ruined any discussion and nuance of this character. When this song dropped, it was the only real piece of info about season 2 that fans were able to understand. Fan translations weren't abundant, and with the song having certain English lyrics, it gave a horrible impression of Lanzhu. Many people interpreted Lanzhu as just being this villain and girl boss with no sense of guilt whatsoever. Now we know that's not true, but for fans who hadn't experienced season 2 yet and saw this, many took it at face value because there was nothing else to prove otherwise. Literally the only thing that saved Lanzhu was Shield's word in chapter 20, stating that she has good intentions and is just simply misunderstood. Without that single interaction, Lanzhu was viewed as such, and that's what many thought of her as. Despite that though, from my research, the global side of All-Stars seemed to be a lot more calmer when discussing the chapters. I was told that's because no one globally read the story, but who said that? While there were some that were annoyed at this conflict even existing, many did stay to give it a benefit of the doubt. The people I interviewed were mainly global because I don't know Japanese, so maybe I'm biased by saying that wasn't that aggressive. No matter if you liked or disliked the season though, a lot of people would agree that the story didn't reach its full potential. The Japanese side was a lot more brutal. Firstly, thank you Fun Colors for helping me out with certain links to tweets and videos showing how the Japanese fanbase reacted. I found his name in old Reddit forums discussing All-Stars, so when I was able to contact him, he helped me a lot with gathering evidence. The official Twitter for Love Life All-Stars usually posted tweets for when chapters were released, and going into the comments shows just how much they were against this idea. Going even further, the Love Life YouTube channel uploaded All-Stars chapter trailers, and if you look at chapter 20, oh my god, the reactions were pretty similar to ours, with many disliking the concept altogether. They didn't want a conflict like this at all, and being frank, almost any Japanese comment you see regarding season 2 is either shocked or mad at Love Life for allowing this. Some were angry at the characters, some were justifiably angry at the writing, and some were angry at Lanzhu for starting the whole deal. A lot of fans were emotionally attached to the characters, so having a conflict like this made people genuinely lose it. Let me paint a story here. Love Life is an idol franchise. People get attached to these characters that are made to be loved. I've been reading some comments on my Love Life videos, and people are very passionate about these characters. For a lot of people, Love Life saved their lives, so they have a lot of emotional attachment to it. And this is just the global side. It's way more prominent in Japan for a multitude of reasons, including the fact that they, speak the same language. With a conflict like this, a lot of fans just wanted it to stop, and when chapter 28 dropped, a lot of fans gave up. This rubbish storyline had gone on long enough, and a lot of fans had the same opinion as me. If the little tiny bit of chapter 20 was removed where Lanzhu set up the security force, then people would be a lot more accepting towards Lanzhu. Why did the other members act like Lanzhu didn't do anything wrong? Why didn't they hold her accountable? And this is coming from the comments that actually put thought into the story. Many were just like, fuck this bitch. There was even a change.org petition that, while it didn't get many signatures, it summarized what many of the Japanese fanbase took issue with. This petition is actually really good, and while I don't agree with certain points, I like that the writer says that serious stories and events are acceptable if they're actually done well. Also, I need to point this out as well. There was a certain amount of talk regarding Lanzhu being Chinese. A lot of casual racism was spread towards her, and in the video, you'll see comments that relate to it. Allegedly, some people interpreted her as an allegory for a Chinese takeover, which is, But yeah, that's all I can really talk about without showing you more direct images of just people telling Lanzhu to go back to her country. Another problem people had was with Aqua and Muse not appearing. I found these tweets during my research, but people were confused as to why Muse and Aqua didn't have much of a presence in Lanzhu's arc. And this is a really good point. In Shioriko's arc, the student council presidents of both Muse and Aqua talk to Shio in order to understand their motivations, and it serves as a pretty good scene between all of them. They only get brief appearances in season 2. It's mainly the Nijigasaki game for this season, with some people being thankful for it because who knows if Muse and Aqua would have been poorly written. Now some of you might be saying, Noodle, why are you rehashing your thoughts? And the reason for that is to illustrate that many Japanese fans had the same sentiment. My thoughts do not matter in the grand scheme of things. Even globally, our thoughts don't really matter that much, especially in recent times. But Japanese fans? Oh, their thoughts matter. And many didn't just express their negative thoughts on the story. No, it went much further. The negativity of Season 2 spread past the game. And it's here where we need to dive down to the real-life impacts of Season 2's reception. Ai and Karen's popularity dropped down the ball when Season 2 dropped. In All-Stars, there were channel rankings that people could use to support their favorite girl. Thanks to BS Anime's videos and archived spreadsheet along with some Reddit forums, we can see how certain girls ranked. And during Season 2, Ai and Karen were dead last. This trend continued as they would rank low for a bunch of weeks after. Being real though, this channel ranking system was kinda brutal. Someone was always gonna have to be dead last, and it was evidently clear people would express their frustrations with the characters by making them at the bottom. During my interviews, one of them brought up the fact that sales for Ai and Karen actually dropped due to the fiasco in Season 2. This was actually brought to my attention in my neglected Love Life video, where they mentioned the same thing. K-Books, a secondhand market that sells a multitude of merchandise, was brought up during these conversations. Unfortunately, it's been 4 years since the whole fiasco, so there wasn't much evidence to be found. There were tweets mentioning K-Book and Makari regarding the sales of Ai and Karen going down, so there definitely is some truth to this. Along with that, it seems that the hate for Ai and Karen expanded over to the music releases. During the time of Season 2, new singles are being released for the subunits. This included Diver Diva, consisting of Ai and Karen, the two characters who are currently the most despised. Thanks to Cute Orange Pamu, he was able to grab the Oricon charts record for when it was released, and it's not exactly the best. To those who say number 9 isn't bad, I agree, but when placing against the other subunit singles that were released during their week, you can clearly see that they had much better rankings. If this is wrong, let me know. I'm gonna be real, Oricon charts is still confusing to me. I know track sales. Secondhand accounts were all I had going to this section. He said, she said, there wasn't a lot of evidence to be directly shown. I was told the seiyus were harassed, which I recall happening, but there weren't many tweets or messages I could find. Thanks to my friend Alex, I was able to find a channel that archived many Love Live streams during this time, but wasn't able to find anything out of the ordinary. For anyone curious why I was doing this, I was given leads that the seiyus took a step back from the live streams and how they quickly brushed past the story in the streams. I actually took the time to scan through most of the streams that talked about the Season 2 chapters. While it is true that the third years weren't there for a certain portion, it wasn't that strange since not everyone can make it. And unfortunately, halfway through, I realized the big error. I don't know Japanese, so I don't know when they start talking and when they stop talking about the chapter, and I can only use visuals for so long. I don't know why I include this. I just really want to compliment for taking time out of my day to watch these streams. Anyway, most of the hate was actually dedicated towards the head writer of Season 2. He's the one that received the most amount of hate, and while I don't like a ton of decisions he and the writing team made, I don't think he deserves all the harassment. At the same time though, he kinda killed All-Stars. Yeah, it's been readily reported by a ton of people I interviewed that much of the player base dipped out of the game when Season 2 started. They already had people who left because it was more RPG focused at the start, but after Season 2 dropped, the story was so controversial that some people couldn't take it. And to an extent, I understand. If you're a whale or a person who spends money on the game, then seeing it take your favorite characters and placing them in an unknown conflict and then having them face against each other with confusing writing would make me reconsider playing your game. Please keep in mind that a lot of these actions were around the start of the season. These chapters were monthly, so a lot of time passed, allowing for people to slowly grow more and more upset. Now, how does this relate to Lanzhu, is what some of you might be asking. Well, if your newly established character is presented as a villain along with causing the main conflict of the entire season, who do you think people are going to point their fingers at? When Season 2 started, I suspected immediately that Protocol was activated to do its best to suppress the hatred of Lanzhu, something I like to call Lanzhu damage control. This is where a ton of retcons along with real life promotion come together to help paint Lanzhu in a better light. Now you can personally disagree with me, but here are my reasons as it helps explain why the story was written the way it is. And if you think this is some conspiracy shit, just skip to the next section. Firstly, the retcons of Lanzhu's actions are perfectly explained if they changed it to help tone down Lanzhu's aggressive actions at the beginning. I do not believe this entire story was retconned. I believe a ton of things were set in place and happened the way they did, it's just the little details got changed in order to shift the tone of the story. Why else does Lanzhu's initial actions get brushed aside like they don't exist? Like I said, Lanzhu's initial actions are buried so fast, there's no way it could have been the way it was supposed to go. Having the mindset of them course correcting Lanzhu ironically helps make the story more understandable, because if you watch it like how I did, you are going to be confused. There are plot points that were clearly established in the writer's room and get explored, such as Lanzhu, but like I said earlier, it's like there's two different stories, two different versions of Lanzhu that get mishmashed together until it creates a result that makes most of the player base happy. You have the Lanzhu at the start of chapter 20, and the Lanzhu the Nijigasaki members view her as, and they are not the same despite many similarities. And if the writers actually looked directly at me and said, this story was not changed in the slightest, this was actually how everything was supposed to go, I think I would have lost faith in Love Live forever. If you don't believe me that they were trying to show Lanzhu more positively, take a look at this. During my research, I came across a Reddit post detailing a magazine version of Lanzhu that was apparently much nicer than her game counterpart. Supposedly, she was more well written and likable, and the commenter wished that they had gone with this version of Lanzhu. With help from Funk, we were able to find the exact magazine this person was talking about. In February of 2021, in Love Life Days Volume 13, Mia and Lanzhu would make their first appearance. Lanzhu has a short panel discussing how she would give out chocolates to your senior, and notice the tone. Now, Google Translate won't provide the most accurate result, but there's not really a trace of the antagonist Lanzhu we know currently. In fact, she acts similar to how she does after season 2. This single panel confused a lot of people reading, as it seemed to be painting Lanzhu in a light that, at the time, was not her. She wasn't this nice person who helped give out chocolates in the helicopter. This was February, months before Lanzhu would officially apologize. You can read the comments when it was published. Some were confused about this different version of Lanzhu. Some were wondering if management was whacked out publishing this because it was clear that this was what Lanzhu was gonna be like eventually, but they, for some reason or another, published it now. I even found some English comments talking about what the obvious goal was. This backfired, however, as many called Lanzhu filth for infecting Love Life Days with her presence. It was a case where no matter how much they tried to amend Lanzhu, it just made things way worse. For those that hated her, trying to make her more likable just felt forced in their eyes. And for those who liked the antagonist part of her, seeing those actions be taken away and having the cast magically support her made them confused. It was a lose-lose situation, and the apology in chapter 29 cements that. After Lanzhu joins the club in chapter 29, she has a very personal apology given to Anata-chan. Now, over the course of the season so far, there's been a bit of rivalry between the two, as they battle between passion versus professionalism. Anata-chan focuses on passion and the unique vision of a school idol, while Lanzhu focuses on the logistics of one, what makes someone the greatest. Now, I don't mind this apology. It makes sense for a character to do this. What I don't like is how the story deals with it. This is a big moment for Lanzhu. For her ego, for her pride, it's taken a lot out of her to do this. And how does Anata-chan and the story react? Psh, it's nothing, don't worry about it. Anata-chan doesn't care about it. The story doesn't care about it. I don't care about anyone, man. Me neither. Why is Kasumi the only one who cares? She's the only one who cares that they were forced into this position. She's the only one who makes Lanzhu apologize for the 1984 Big Brother shit she did. And I love that she formally apologizes for it. It's one of the few times the story directly addresses what she did rather than downplay it. The biggest issue, though, is that Lanzu's apology about her actions isn't toward Anata-chan, but Kasumi. And it's only in 2 lines before Kasumi gets shut up like it's a joke. The one fundamental issue that changes how Lanzu is perceived isn't put in its own moment. No. It's put in a normal line, acting as if we can just let slide by. Emma saying, "Let's let bygones be bygones," actually the most insane thing ever. Am I crazy? Am I acting like Kasumi right now? Because if the only thing Lanzhu did was establish the association and beg people to join, then that'd be fine. But she didn't. She made it so the only option was to join her, and enforced it. And the story gives little attention to this despite being the initial main conflict. Lanzhu did not earn forgiveness even though I wanted her to forgive. Who greenlit this? I take back everything bad I said about you, Kasumi. You're the greatest. Lanzu's impact on love life is felt throughout the entire franchise and what conflict can do. It's not even a matter if it's a good conflict or bad conflict, just conflict in general. You will never see an antagonist or situation like Lanzhu again because of both how poorly received she was and how poorly written her story was. She wasn't even allowed to be evil for 2 seconds before they got scared. With the seiyus receiving hate from what I've been told, it was made very clear that the general audience didn't like mean characters or plot lines. Even in something like Superstar, I was made aware by Mimo that Ren's seiyu got hate because people didn't like how mean she was, and this occurred during the same time as All-Star Season 2. Because of the combination of these 2 events, Love Life has effectively put a no antagonist rule on their series. They'll still have rivals and conflicts and the like, but you'll never see them reach the level of what Lanzhu did. And no, Wien doesn't even come close to Lanzhu in her presence. Season 3 of Superstar is the most obvious when it has a split club situation similar to All-Stars. But the tone isn't similar and it isn't taken that seriously. No betrayals here, guys. It should be noted that Love Life doesn't need to have an antagonist to have an engaging plot. And going back to Mimo, he points to Hasuna Sora as that barely has any antagonist and is a very good series. I agree, as I made a 1-hour video on it. But it's the fact that Love Life is no longer able to experiment with different plot elements that is extremely disappointing. Anyway, let's talk about Lanzhu again, because after season 2, she's pretty cool. Yeah, after a character is fully established, she's really sweet, and I want to focus on her positives because they get to shine the most now that the association arc is done. Most of Lanzu's development and growth comes from learning how to socialize with her friends. Her traits are retained from season 2, and this includes her egotistic nature, but it's presented in a much more playful attitude now that she isn't someone that's threatening you to join her. With Lanzhu officially being in the club, it's the first time she's been able to have this many friends in one place. She does everything in the world to celebrate it. She makes a notebook talking about all the things she wants to do with everyone, she moves into the dorms, and has a ton of mini arcs that focus on her character. Lanzhu's very airheaded and often doesn't see the big picture unless specifically stated. When she has her friends set up her dorm room, she points and instructs them to place certain things around, while she herself does nothing. And then after being told that there are friends and not her housekeepers, she then switches her attitude and decides to do everything herself, even if it's too much for her. Her character can be described as a fish out of water archetype, where everything around her is new and she isn't fully adjusted to her surroundings and what the norm is. To illustrate what I mean, when the Nijigasaki gang decide to plan a welcome party for Lanzhu and Mia, Lanzhu wants to be in charge of the welcome party instead of everything. That should tell you everything you need to know. All these current events help further elaborate on Lanzhu's loneliness. Her loneliness wasn't just social, but also life in general. She grew up rich and spoiled. She can't fold clothes for shit, she can't use the vacuum cleaner, and don't let her play Minecraft, she'd burn the house somehow. While most of it is played comedically, the genuine moments where she feels happiness for both interacting with people and learning how to live on her own are the best parts of her character. She even apologizes again for what happened in season 2, which I try to forget, but I'm glad Lanzhu is still aware of what she's done. Everyone else, I guess they got Men in Black or something. The most intriguing arc with Lanzhu post season 2 is where she takes care of a baby bird. It sounds weird, but let me continue. This baby bird was found all alone, and Lanzhu, naming the bird Chirpy, decides to become its mother. What ensues is essentially a metaphor for Lanzhu's loneliness projected onto Chirpy. Chirpy was found all alone, and Lanzhu is determined to make sure it can live on its own, similar to how Lanzhu used to be. She feeds it, watches training videos that teach it how to fly, and eventually Chirpy flies off on its own. Later though, Chirpy returns with a group of friends, and it's a little on the nose, but helps Lanzhu understand how she and Chirpy are similar. This soon transitions to a love for animals and children. As someone who's frequently misunderstood, Lanzhu understands that some people are hard to understand than others. She reads books to understand animals at the zoo, what caused them to do what they do. As she keeps learning more and more about them, she eventually starts to see the uniqueness in everything. It's really great development for her as her egoist nature begins to dial down as she realizes everyone is special. She's top of the top, but everyone is their own version of being top of the top. Despite that though, she still very clearly has an ego of thinking she's better than you, even if it's not in a harmful way. Lanzhu's characterization in All Stars was an incredibly mixed bag with many fumbles along the way. Her character was solid, and even after watching season 2, Lanzhu is clearly the highlight of the series. A talented individual that grew up rich with no reference for anything in life. She's insecure and feels that she's destined to be alone, and with a facade, pretends that everything is going her way. It's such an interesting aspect of her character, thinking she's the best person in the world and that everyone would very obviously follow her no matter what. That character arc, I believe, was always established and was always the plan for Lanzhu. I don't think that changed after watching season 2. What I do think changed were the elements surrounding her. Because of real life issues and the reception, her character was altered. It took completely downplaying the situation that she created and rushing a resolution so that her character could finally get to the point they wanted her to be at. It's a tragic fate because the writers did not know what they were doing, and Lanzhu took most of the damage because of it. It sucks because after season 2, Lanzhu's character has a lot more shining moments now that she isn't forced to have an antagonist role. I'll say it again, the problem wasn't Lanzhu, it was the story surrounding Lanzhu and how the writers dealt with her. A villain that wasn't able to be a villain, or maybe she wasn't meant to be one at all. Who knows at this point? And I do want to stress that the bad writing of the story isn't entirely on the writing team. I made it clear that I think that real life issues and the reception changed how the story was going to go. When hate for a character goes so strong that other characters' popularity drops, their sales start decreasing, say you start getting unnecessary hate, you gotta do what you gotta do. It wasn't perfect, but the intentions were clear cut even if a lot of fans already gave up on them. I will respect the staff of Love Life for attempting damage control and protecting those that were being affected. Except for the head writer, he was left to die. Either way, the reception of season 2 was worrying for a multitude of reasons. What it meant for Love Life as a whole, what it meant for All Stars, but also what it meant for Nijigasaki. The Nijigasaki anime had already premiered before season 2, and questions arose on whether or not the later arcs of SIFAS would be adapted. Shioriko's arc hadn't been adapted yet, as well as Lanzhu and Mia, so there was suspense in how they would be implemented. Well, in 2022, we would finally get our answers, and this was a second chance. A chance to fix the mistakes of the past. A chance to fix bad writing and to make the version that maybe the writers originally intended. When Nijigasaki season 2 dropped, we received a different version of Lanzhu, one that was very much affected by our previous incarnation. To illustrate the biggest difference between All Stars Lanzhu and Anime Lanzhu, we need to talk about their plot involvement. Lanzhu's presence in season 2 is nowhere near season 2 of All Stars. While their motivations are similar, Lanzhu does not try to create her own school idol club and force others to join. Rather, she respects the school idols but doesn't agree with their goals for becoming one, and so she becomes a solo school idol to show what her resolve for how a school idol should be. Lanzhu takes a back seat during the events of season 2, making her presence known but not an obstacle. No stealing members, no setting up security guards, no betrayal here. I like how clear cut it is. Lanzhu doesn't need to use any school powers to force them to join her. Once she realizes she has differences with the club, she immediately splits off. It creates a pretty non-existent conflict. Her personality is a lot more mellowed out than her game counterpart. While she retains her confidence, the way she expresses it is more subtle, like she knows she's better than you but doesn't need to prove it. This is in stark contrast to her game counterpart, where she wouldn't hesitate to praise herself. A lot of her ego got lost in the transition actually. Going from the All-Stars to the anime, they made her a a lot less airheaded. Game Lanzhu could be insulted but wouldn't notice, but this version is more insecure. She thinks people don't fuck with her, and she actually doubts herself a lot internally. The anime shows her struggles pretty well, opting for a subtle show don't tell. She's firm in her beliefs and is a lot more open-minded, to the point she tells the Squad Club to prove it when discussing their goals for being a school idol. The go-lucky happy version of Lanzhu is only briefly seen in episode 1, but after that she's mostly reserved. I am slightly sad that she doesn't retain her go-lucky nature. It gave her a ton of nuance with the way she talked versus the way she acted. She says a lot of shit but doesn't really mean it, even if the direct words that came out of her mouth were, "I'm better than you." But because they go a different route with the anime version of Lanzhu, they place much more focus on her insecurities on being alone. Lanzhu's story of being alone because of her talents is partially retained in the story. It's even a core theme in her song Utopia. It's lonely being at the top, and similar to her game version, was unable to comprehend groups of idols working together with their own vision. She doesn't understand why, and as she slowly sees her only friends join the Squad Club, it makes her think she's the problem. Despite the changes, the events between All-Stars and the anime are pretty similar. Lanzhu has respect for the Squad Club, establishes her own gig, and becomes insecure when she realizes she doesn't understand why no one wants to be her friend. The anime plays this up more naturally, and it's actually one of the benefits of the faster pace as we get to clearly see the events that make Lanzhu question herself. When the characters eventually discover Lanzhu's backstory, it makes a lot more sense for them to all want Lanzhu back. Lanzhu's a school idol just like them, and having her give up on her dream isn't something they accept, given how they work together to support each other's dreams. Rivals, but friends. The entire concept of Nijigasaki is based around solo idols. People who are rivals, but friends. In the story, Lanzhu only appears as a rival, but doesn't have the friends part, which contributes to her insecurities. This conclusion feels a lot less forced than the anime because of Lanzhu's non-existent actions, and is another credit I'll give the anime. By removing her antagonistic nature and parts of her ego, it essentially transforms her into a partial post-season 2 All-Stars version, which seems to be the unified version of Lanzhu as we know today. When Lanzhu joins the club, she has a similar arc trying to befriend everyone, and it's here where the differences shine the most. Remember the post-season 2 stories I told you about, and how Lanzhu was a fish out of water type of person? Even though she had good intentions, she had to learn how to be friends with people? Well, the anime drops most of Lanzhu's obliviousness, and opts for a more introverted approach. She's never had friends like this before, so she's nervous and scared. She gets a whole episode dedicated to learning how to talk to her new friends, and eventually asking everyone for a picture. It's sweet, it's charming, but shows a very clear message of what this version of Lanzhu is. She is not the All-Stars version, and is that bad? Now I have many gripes with season 2 of Nijigasaki. I'm not a fan of how it handles Shioriko, and I'm not a fan of how it handles Mia Taylor. And for Lanzhu, I'm very mixed on how I feel. On one hand, season 2 of All-Stars was a mess, and I'm glad it wasn't adapted bar for bar. But at the same time, I'm disappointed they went this route. Adaptations are very special things. They have the ability to fix characters, fix scenes that weren't done the best, and maybe create a definitive version. A lot of people say Lanzhu was neutered in a sense, and a part of me agrees. It only feels like a certain percentage of her is kept intact in the transition, and the most intriguing aspects of her are gone. Her ego and obliviousness is gone, and while it still retains her insecurities and loneliness, the ego was a really good trait of hers as it masked her insecurities. The ego she presents in the anime is not even close to what it is for All-Stars. Her ego was so big that she felt unstoppable, and it created a big disconnect between her and her classmates, which helped show Lanzhu's loneliness. It wasn't just that she was talented, it's that many of her talents and ego pushed people away. That isn't exactly retained here. It makes her more sympathetic as we understand how she feels, but getting rid of one of her defining traits in my eyes is baffling to say the least. She still is energetic, but not the level where it includes her ego. She doesn't casually insult people and act like she's better than them, and honestly that's a charm I liked about her. It isolated her in a very unique way that the anime attempts, but with a much different tone. I do not see the anime version of Lanzhu saying, "I declare today is Love Lanzhu Day." If you want the biggest example of her ego being gone, look at Utopia, her first song in the anime, and look at Queendom, her first song in All-Stars. That song is Lanzhu just aura farming on everyone how she's the best and how everyone should submit to her. There's quite literally no nuance within her words that show any sense of her loneliness compared to Utopia. In the context of the series, it just shows how good her masking is, but to most people, they won't understand because this is literally the first thing we see regarding her. But you know, after watching all of season 2, I'm happy for this version of Lanzhu. It's a version that sadly doesn't retain all of her original aspects, but it's one where I can watch it and not feel horrible inside. Despite my thoughts though, there is one underlying fact about this whole ordeal. The anime version of Lanzhu is the one most people are gonna remember. As of right now, All-Stars is dead. I deadass tortured myself by rewatching season 2 and doing all this research to gather people's thoughts. I can guarantee that most people are not gonna do what I did. They're just gonna watch the anime. In my interviews, I specifically asked them how they feel about the anime version of Lanzhu being the one most people remember. And many said that while it isn't the full Lanzhu experience, it isn't inaccurate. Those who haven't experienced All-Stars will probably find Lanzhu to be an interesting character, and honestly, that's alright. I had some people say they'll miss that version as she was better, and I agree, it's just, man. I wanna let you guys all know, I came into this video with very high optimism. I was interviewing people, gathering people's thoughts, and it was a fun time. It was fun learning about the history of All-Stars Season 2 and the different opinions people had. It's been a while since I, remember fully watching it. I saw positive, I saw negative, and when I fully rewatched all of All Stars Season 2 for this, all of the optimism disappeared. This story made me sad. I didn't think poor writing could be this apparent in the series, and I really kept an unbiased viewpoint. Like, I saw positives, I saw the negatives, but the negatives started affecting the entire story structure on a level I didn't know was possible. It made it so clear that Lanzhu was really just a poor victim of bad writing. It drained me both watching and writing this because I could feel my will to live slowly depleting as I begin discussing every single plot of Season 2. Alright, the movie. Okay, I originally planned to review this movie, but now I'm kinda a bit too late. But let's talk about it, as it has a whole mini arc on Lanzhu's individuality as she clashes with her mother. Firstly, some interesting things to note. Now that I'm fresh off of Season 2 of All Stars watching this, it's very clear that this Lanzhu's version of being an egoist is way more toned down. She's more clear-cut for words towards others. It's just something I personally have to accept, but in return, we do get more of an energetic nature from All Stars, which I am happy for. To provide brief context, a school idol Grand Prix is introduced, allowing our members to compete against each other across the world. Half of the school idol members head over to Okinawa to participate, and it's soon revealed Lanzhu's mother is a sponsor for the Grand Prix. Now, Lanzhu's mom hasn't gotten the best attention. The most I said about her was in Season 2, where I said she should get fired for allowing her daughter to terrorize students. Here though, her inclusion is a bit more focused on, and on my first viewing, she actually reminded me of All Stars Lanzhu. When she meets up with Lanzhu, she tells her that she's a sponsor and proceeds to upgrade Lanzhu's hotel room, implying that she'll do anything to help her daughter achieve the best. Lanzhu doesn't take well to this, calling it favoritism, and plans to drop out of the Grand Prix because of her mother's influence. Both Lanzhu's mom in the anime and All Stars Lanzhu commit actions that they believe will help people, but are ignorant to why they reject it. They're both overly hospitable, giving out the best treatment to everyone that especially includes food. Here though, it only lasts for around 15 minutes as Lanzhu's mom realizes how she was misinterpreted. And it's thanks to Kasumi that Lanzhu and her mom reconnect. How strange is it that Kasumi is the go in every universe? That's so bizarre. Lanzhu's arc in the movie shows the growth that she's developed in the anime. She wants to be the best of the best, but how does she want to go about doing that? Does she want to take shortcuts, take the easy path all the time? No. In the anime, we see her gain respect for school idols as her ideals and beliefs clash with them. Her idea of rivalry and competitions are shown in how she wants to win the fair fight. No trickery, just raw skill, like she's always done, like she's always seen, coming from her experience watching school idols. She used to believe that she had to achieve it alone to be at that level, to be at the top. This is shown more in her song Phoenix, where she discusses how the meeting of Nijigasaki gave her the wings to fly once more, and this time to not fly alone. It reminds me of Chirpy actually. That's a really weird comparison, I'm sorry. One thing I really enjoy about the movie is how it continues to focus on individuality. The whole movie is centered around a ranking system in which you have to be you in order to be your best. For Lanzhu, it works especially well because her whole idea is based on being the best, being an individual no one can match up to. Lanzhu grows to further understand the link between friends and rivalry as they help push each other up to become stronger. Her speech towards Ayumu is a great example of this, as she acknowledges all of Ayumu's accomplishments and states how it's helped her want to become better to surpass her. I wouldn't be surprised if after this, we might see more of Lanzhu's older traits appear. Seeing this honestly makes me really happy on the focus of individuality. I'm sad that the Nijigasaki series wasn't able to really experiment with the negatives of individuality, but maybe the other movies might do something. Yo guys, I forgot about Nijiyon animation, so I'm adding this in. Nijiyon is really good. Watching it is like a mix between the anime universe and the All-Stars universe. There's no real plot, so I can just focus on the characterization. She's awesome. I like her a lot in Nijiyon. I won't say 100%, but this is pretty much All-Stars Lanzhu. Her ego, her very inept social nature, it's all pretty much retained. She honestly kind of thrives in this environment, and I'm glad Nijiyon actually takes advantage of it. It kind of sucks this and the visual novel are probably the only times we'll see this version of Lanzhu again, but who knows? But that is the character of Lanzhu Zhong, so far. She's definitely a character who's gone through a ton of changes over the course of her life. It's not even a case where a character just naturally gets changed such as when Muse or Aqua got an anime, no. This was a change that was done because of how she was received, and it took a while before her character was slowly built back up. As a talented but socially inept character, Lanzhu wanted to do her best to have friends by having them be at her level. She was alone because of her talents. She was told she was talented and knew she was as well. Her ego prompted her to create a situation in which everyone was forced to join her, so she herself could train them to be at the top of the top. Then when that happened, she wouldn't be alone and she would have friends. But she failed to neglect how people reacted. The people she wanted to be friends with treat her as a villain. If you strip everything away from them instead of security guards to stop them from practicing, they won't like it. She genuinely thought this was the right course of action, but she failed to realize that being talented isn't what matters. It's the passion of doing what you believe in, even if you aren't necessarily the best. The school idols she looked up to were all unique for this reason. Their different visions and skill sets made them shine apart from each other, and Lanzhu soon realized that she was in the wrong to try to make them special like her. They were already special, and Lanzhu apologized for her wrongdoings. But because of how the story was written, parts of her character arc and how the characters around reacted were slowly toned down to the point her arc no longer felt fulfilling, and instead felt forced. Many fans hate the story for a multitude of reasons, and it ultimately left Lanzhu in a very confusing state where most of her character was retained, but the reactions to the events she did weren't tonally correct, and fans interpreted it as the series trying to forget Lanzhu's evil actions. Her story was salvageable at a cost, where things were brushed aside to focus on her character now that she was an antagonist. Season 3 and beyond would help flesh out Lanzhu's character with her socially inept traits, while still maintaining her ego that was a part of Season 2. A lot more direct focus was put onto her loneliness, and how she unintentionally kept fucking up due to how she thinks. When her transition to the anime came, the aspect of her loneliness was heavily focused more, and large parts of her involvement in the plot were removed. Her character was made more sympathetic with episodes focusing on her social ineptness, and it was ultimately a version of Lanzhu that was affected by her previous counterpart. Gone was most of her straight-faced ego. The movie would help show more of this version of Lanzhu, showing her as someone who's grown to see and respect the individuality in everyone, and this time, it didn't take having the plot be broken for it to happen. I understand what Love Live was intending. Have a character who's more antagonistic, bring conflict on a level never seen before, but it caused controversy and had to debatably break characters and logic for said conflict to work. They put everything around her in her initial appearance. It established the goal and the message. This was someone who wasn't fucking around. Now, did she have bad intentions with what she did? Well, at the time, we didn't explicitly know, and a ton of Love Live fans didn't care to know. Just as quickly as the new and interesting elements arrived, it quickly dissipated, creating a result that no one was happy with. The reception of her character spread across Love Life, and while the story of Season 2 and her original counterpart have been put under the table, it's extremely important to know its history. The creation of this video was filled with a ton of emotions, mostly anger and sadness and emotional baggage. It involved a ton of research from fans who didn't want any of this to happen, and fans who called Love Life pussies for immediately backpedaling on the antagonistic attitude. Maybe in the future, Love Life will attempt something like this again, but mark my words, it will never, ever get to the level that Lanzhu did. The writers flew her too close to the sun and created a series of events that you will see in every corner of Love Life after. I never really did elaborate on why I wanted to make this video. The whole villain statement was just a way for me to get people interested in the video. I just personally want to talk about Lanzhu. She's personally one of those special characters that you can't help but love. Like, she's similar to Cosme in a lot of ways, and I guess a part of me likes the egoist nature of her. In fact, I really like both versions of her. I like the version of her that's so overly confident while not having malicious intent, but I also like the version that's more introverted, more insecure, yet confident in her own abilities despite her solitude. Both are unique characters that I'm glad I was able to genuinely watch and, take in every aspect. I've gotten a much better understanding of Lanzhu in All-Star Season 2 for that matter. It's been something I want to do for such a long time now, and I'm glad that I was, finally able to do it in a format that I'm happy with. I don't think I want to think about Lanzhu again for a while. It really is funny. I had the entire outline for this video already planned, talking about, Season 2 and talking about Lanzhu being mainly positive, but the thing was, I was mostly basing it off my pre-existing memories of Season 2, which were pretty positive, because after rewatching Season 2, the entire structure of the video changed because of my thoughts. That should tell you how bad the season is. I am Lanzhu done. I have received too much Lanzhu in my brain, and I decided to flesh it out all with this video. I love her, but I am taking a break. I had a lot more fun skipping the House and the Sword video, but this one, that entire season section, man, changes you. And again, shouts to everyone involved. Thank you, Yoshi Star, for your in-depth analysis on Lanzhu that I took some references from. Shouts to Funk for, all the sources and such. Shouts to everyone that helped me with the interview, just providing, some people are negative, some people are positive, some people are neutral, but, just gathering all those thoughts and trying to create one single video combining both my thoughts and everyone else's and fan reception. That was really cool, and I really appreciate everyone for doing that. Thank you. And shouts to Sophie, who helped out with big parts of the script, especially regarding All-Stars post Season 2, and what was this thing? Shouts to Lanzhu. Lanzhu. Yeah. Anyway, I'm off to a convention now. I'm going to SakuraCon. I'm going to be recording some videos here and there, which are going to be kept secret, but it's going to be super, super cool. And for those of you who have watched my videos so far, I just want to say thank you. We're coming close to the anniversary of when I started doing all this stupid video stuff. And after SakuraCon, things are going to start rising. We're going to start doing more experimental stuff, still keeping the core of the Noodle channel. With the release of this video, I am officially taking a break, and I designate this video as the end of Season 1 for the Noodle channel. Roll the credits.